From the very moment she boarded the plane, Elena Hayes carried herself with quiet authority. At 42 years old, she was one of the most respected CEOs in America, an African-American woman who had built her company from scratch, turning a small startup into a billion-dollar global brand. But she wasn't dressed in flashy designer wear or showing off her success. Elena wore a simple navy blue dress, her natural curls tucked neatly back, and a leather notebook in her hand. She didn't need to announce who she was, her presence spoke for itself. The flight attendants didn't know who she was. To them, she was just another passenger flying first class that evening. But the way they treated her would soon set in motion an unforgettable chain of events. The first signs of disrespect. As Elena settled into her seat, she noticed subtle differences. The man next to her, a banker in an expensive suit, was greeted with champagne and a warm smile. When the attendant came to her row, the smile vanished, replaced by a rushed, almost dismissive tone. "Can I get you some water?" the attendant asked flatly, without eye contact. Elena didn't think much of it at first. She'd faced her share of prejudice in boardrooms across the world. But when meal service came around, the moment turned into something far bigger. The attendant leaned over her seat, tray in hand. "I'm sorry, we've run out of first-class meals. We can offer you something from economy instead." Elena glanced at the banker beside her, who had just been served a steak dinner, complete with wine. Confused, she asked politely, "How could you run out? I booked this seat weeks ago." The attendant shrugged. "We just didn't plan for extras. Do you want the sandwich from the back or not?" The tone was cutting. Other passengers glanced over, some with pity, others with judgment. Elena felt the heat of humiliation rise in her chest. But instead of reacting in anger, she quietly closed her notebook, looked at the tray, and said, "No, thank you." The long flight of reflection. For the next 6 hours, Elena sat in silence. She wasn't angry about missing a meal. She had been hungry before in her life, much hungrier than this. What weighed on her was something deeper: the dismissiveness, the casual disregard, the assumption that she didn't belong in that seat. It reminded her of her early years. She remembered being the only black woman in a corporate meeting room, ignored while her ideas were brushed aside, only for a man to repeat them later and receive applause. She remembered being told she looked too young to be a CEO. She remembered walking into luxury spaces and being treated as though she was an imposter. And now, here she was, in first class, paying for a seat she had more than earned, and still, the world tried to remind her she didn't belong. But what the crew didn't know was that Elena's company had just finalized a multi-million-dollar partnership with the very airline she was flying on. This wasn't just any passenger they had brushed aside, this was one of their most important business allies. The landing. When the plane touched down, Elena waited patiently as passengers disembarked. The flight crew smiled politely, clearly unaware of the storm about to hit. Once the cabin was nearly empty, Elena stood. Her voice was calm but commanding. "Before I leave this plane, I need to speak with the captain and the crew." Confused, they gathered at the front. Passengers still lingering nearby paused, sensing something unusual. Elena reached into her bag and pulled out a sleek leather folder. Inside was her company's official contract with the airline. Their faces paled as she spoke. "My name is Elena Hayes. I am the CEO of Hayes Global. 2 weeks ago, your airline signed a 10-year partnership with my company, worth over $200 million. And yet tonight, on this flight, I was denied the very service I paid for, not because of logistics but because of the way I was seen. As less. As undeserving." The captain stammered, "Ma'am, if there's been a mistake." Elena cut him off gently but firmly. "It wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. The way I was treated reflects not just one meal, but the culture you've allowed to exist in this crew. And I will not allow my company's name to stand next to one that disrespects its passengers." Her voice grew sharper, each word deliberate. "Effective immediately, I will be reporting this incident to your board of directors, and I will personally ensure that every single member of this crew is relieved of duty. You represent this airline's values, and tonight, you failed them." The cabin fell silent. The banker who had sat beside her now looked at her with wide eyes, realizing just how badly the attendants had misjudged the woman they dismissed. The aftermath. News of the incident spread like wildfire. Within 48 hours, the airline's executive team issued a public apology. The crew was suspended pending investigation, and the airline pledged mandatory retraining for all staff on respect, equality, and customer dignity. But Elena didn't stop there. She used her influence to create a new initiative, Dignity First, a program designed to ensure that no customer, regardless of race, gender, age, or appearance, would ever face humiliation in the skies again. The lesson. Weeks later, Elena reflected on the night. She didn't take satisfaction in firing the crew. It wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability. About reminding the world that power, respect, and dignity aren't tied to appearances. She later shared the story publicly, closing with words that went viral. You never know who you're serving. But whether someone is a billionaire or a janitor, whether they're in first class or the last row of economy, they deserve respect. And if you can't see the worth in a human being, then you have no business serving people at all. The story became more than a scandal, it became a wake-up call. And Elena Hayes, the woman once denied a simple meal, ended up feeding the world with a message it desperately needed to hear.